I'm Brandon Mason. I'm here with Jim Turner, who's the founder of Optibikes. Thanks so much for having us here, Jim, today.
Oh, it's great to have you here, Brandon.
Thank
you.
Really
refreshing.
Thank you. And so we're coming up on your 20th anniversary for Optibike, which is really exciting. You've got a lot of stories to tell. We've been talking. One of the things that has really popped out for me is the customer stories that you've shared. We'll unpack more like your personal story, but I want to first go into some of the customer stories that have really stood out for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the customers they really make it all worth it. You know, when you hear people have changed their lives. And just one customer I'm thinking of, he's in his 70s, and this bike is his like means of exercise and vitality. And he's done over 35,000 miles on his Optibike. And he just tells me that's his life. Like everyone else is kind of sedentary, and it gives him that feeling of exhilaration and getting out and staying active. More than a decade ago, I got a call from a guy, and he said he'd been to his doctor, and his doctor told him if he didn't lose a bunch of weight, he was going to be dead in 3 years. And he suggested going to a fat farm. And the guy said, that's like $5,000-$10,000 a week. I think I'll buy an Optibike. And he took the money out of his 401k because he said, I'm not going to need it. If I don't do this, I don't need my 401k because I'm going to be dead. And we sent him a bike, and he just changed his life. He was like riding 100-mile rides. After a while, he'd go out on century rides with younger people, and he was in his 50s. He was an executive, kind of got in that way of he'd gotten overweight from just life. And he started losing, I think he lost like 50 pounds, and he didn't change his diet at all. And his only complaint was from his wife. She says, you're not home much anymore. You're having all this fun. And what was really great is a few years ago, he actually came out and visited me here, and telling stories, and that was neat.
Have you had other customers come out and visit you here at the shop?
Yes. I've had customers that have owned every single Optibike since 2007. And so I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of them and learning about their lives. Another story is a guy, his wife, unfortunately, got cancer, and she was using the Optibike to ride. And the doctors had said, you really can't do exercise. And she'd go out for like 15-mile ride. And just being outside, and it gave her peace and satisfaction and some exercise. And she outlived the diagnosis of the doctors. And I think that's neat, when people are able to do more than they thought they could.
So health is one of the major reasons why people buy an Optibike, and it might sort of get them back out and active again. If mountain biking or road biking, they're not quite up to, but it's with the power assist, it gives them the opportunity to get back out there.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great training device because what we say, you control your experience. So if another gentleman, actually the husband of this lady, he has some heart issues and had a few things in his heart, and he's not supposed to get over a certain heart rate. And he's a real active guy. He skied all his life. He's in his 70s now. And he goes out, on all these rails to trails in the woods and everything. He goes, I can go up any hill because I can control my heart rate. Mm-hmm. Whereas on a normal bike, I maybe can't do that, and it's not good for me. So he's going on 50-mile rides, several hours out in the woods, and he just loves it. It's changed his life. I think he's bought like 4 bikes. He bought them for the rest of his family because he thought they're so great.
So besides for health reasons, what are some of the other reasons why people get an Optibike and really enjoy that experience?
Well, I think it's the feeling of adventure that we sometimes lose. To get out, and I had one of my customers ride from New Mexico to Florida with the Everest in a trailer. He did that when he retired. He did that as a retirement trip. But it really also goes down to your health because, if you switch, a lot of guys have switched to an Optibike to commute. I had a customer in Denver. He was taking the train, and he found out he could ride his bike in literally the same amount of time, but he was getting almost, 2 hours of exercise a day. Mm-hmm. And that was really important to him. keeping them healthy. So people are doing things, even when they go out in the wilderness, in adventure, exercise is part of it, but it's all about our well-being, our health. And the electric bike's also an amazing vehicle for the rest of the planet and the resources, because it's only like 10 cents to charge your bike and ride for 50 miles. So it's a very low cost thing to do once you buy the bike.
Are there any other stories you want to share that come to mind? Maybe somebody else that has come out here to visit you and really just had a remarkable story to tell.
Yeah, I was thinking of Chuck up in Canada. He bought an Optibike, and he came down and picked it up. And he was an older gentleman in his 60s, I think, or maybe he was just retiring. He'd been an accountant, and he started riding his Optibike on all these adventures, off into the mountains and everything. And it became just his source of enjoyment, of recreation. And it was, also making him healthy. So I really like that when people, it's the best part of life when you're getting healthy and you're having fun, and it's giving them a tool that they couldn't do this otherwise. That is really satisfying.
Are there any examples of people who have felt like they became friends of the family?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of them, know us well, like the one customer who's had all the bikes. He lives in Las Vegas, and, my son broke his collarbone. We were down there. He went by him and he checked him out, and so he knows this.
He's a doctor.
Yeah. And, he's met my mom when she was alive and stuff, we get that. Not great friends, but we talk a lot. I talk a lot to some of my customers.
So with that in mind, some of the different customer experiences, I want to go back in time to before you founded Optibike and talk about some of the experiences that gave you inspiration and gave you a foundation for leading this company. And I want to talk first about your motocross experience. You got really into motocross when you were younger, right?
Yes. Yeah. When I started racing when I was 14 and turned pro when I was 16.
And tell me about that experience and how that shaped you.
I was very driven. Motocross was new then, and I started doing it, and I got better and better. And so I then became on the national circuit, and I ended up winning 3 national championships. And then I went into Europe and competed in the world championships there for a season. And then I retired. But, I learned a lot about that, about things and different aspects of life, a lot about health and fitness and what makes a product really unique. Because back then we had these bikes that were called works bikes, and they were hand built by the factories. And so those bikes were tuned exactly for us. And one of the things that stuck with me to Optibike today is that those bikes were so special. They're made for you. In racing, the bike has to be just perfect. It's a very human machine interaction. And I've always tried to emulate that in Optibike, of giving people an experience that the bike is really tuned for them, because that's totally unique. It's not this run of the mill. You can't just buy a bike and win races off the showroom. It's made for you. So that's probably the biggest thing I took out of racing coming forward, is this passion to build things of excellence.
Do you ask people when they're buying the bikes, like what kind of use they're going to put it to?
Yeah. We almost always talk to the customer, and it's a very personal interaction. And we want to find out, where are you going to ride? The distances. First, we need to find out their weights and their limitations. Like some of my customers have shoulder limitations, knee limitations. And so we want to learn all about them. And sometimes we build custom bikes. Thinking back, I've been doing this 20 years, but one customer had a fused knee.
Yeah. So
he wanted the bike, but he couldn't go around with the pedal. The pedal had to be stationary on the one side because his knee was fused, whereas the other one he could pedal. And so we made a special pedal that spun around on the motor for him, and he would just leave that leg there. And he was able to go out and do things and ride, which he couldn't do otherwise. And so, that was a custom thing for him. And that's the sort of level we go to of customizing. But yeah, we learn all about the customer. A lot of people have, sore backs or deficiencies or something. and we build the bike around their needs.
Does that involve like tuning the computer, or what are the different aspects? It's a little bit off in the weeds, but I'm curious.
Yeah. Most of it's the fit. You know, our bikes are pretty adaptable in the power level areas, and it's making sure it fits them, and, you know, that type of thing, and tires and suspension. But we have made custom tunes for people that want, you know, more power or something unique about them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that often helps our R&D, because we learn from those experiences. We usually lose a lot of money on them, but we say we learned something.
And it's part of the fun for you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going back to your background, so you had the motocross background. Was there anything else you wanted to say about, you know, your experience through motocross and how that helped shape like how you look at bikes and what you expect out of a bike?
The biggest thing was the customization. And I think I learned a huge amount about handling of vehicles, which, you know, kind of why I got into Optibike later, is it was all about the handling and making it, these things have to work all together, all the components. And that's another thing. It's not just one component and another. And some bikes, you know, they bolt on a bunch of stuff, but it doesn't work in harmony. And the harmony is really what makes Optibike special. And I think it's missing in a lot of products. It's in one of those things is because we develop the bikes ourselves, we ride them and we tune them, and we ride, you know, and we do that until they're perfect or near perfect.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. I've taken your bikes for a couple of test runs with a friend, and particularly the G2, like feeling how it moves. It's like a mountain bike. It's really just a natural experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of my things is I say there's people can learn the technical knowledge, and then there's art. And you find, and to me, it's the art of the bike. It's not just the technical, it's art, which you don't verbalize. Art, you can't explain a Picasso, you know, you can try, but it's just, and that's what our bikes are. They're like livable art. You can't verbalize all the way it all works. We just make it work.
Well, ultimately, it's about the experience of the person riding the bike.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the experience and not what you have on it.
Let's get into the engineering side of things, because I know you've got a engineering background. You graduated from Harvard what year?
Or from Stanford.
Stanford, I'm sorry. And what year was that?
Is that about 84 or so?
You were working at Ford at some point. Was that right out of college, or were there a couple of steps before you got to Ford?
So this is a funny story in a way, but of relating the two is when I got to Stanford and I went there for graduate school, and they had a party, you know, for the graduate students before. And I started talking to a guy who was really into motocross, Rick. And he was also a programmer and stuff, you know, and into computers. And I told him I wanted to build an electronic shock absorber. And he goes, well, I'll help you, you know, because, you know, the computers, and I knew the shock absorber. And so the first day at class, we had this project design class as a project from Ford to design an electronic shock absorber. And Rick turns to me and goes, you're the guy.
Yeah.
So I started doing that.
Like you already had an intuitive sense of, it just happened to be what they wanted.
Yeah. And so I got chosen for that, and I started working on that project. And that's why I went to Ford from Stanford to continue working on that project at Ford.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you came to Ford right out of school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And tell me about your experience there and what you learned about the engineering process, and what did that company do well? What do they not do so well? You know, what was your overall experience there?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they've changed a lot. It's almost been 40 years or something. It was an interesting experience. And I think I wanted to go because I wanted to be in corporate life and see what it was like and have that experience. And one of the managers told me, you know, we need people like you, but you probably won't like being here. But I found it very non-creative, non-intellectual, and very slow paced. So they were already working on an electronic shock absorbers in a car when I arrived. And I think there were 16 people in my department, and I think in a year, I was running the department basically by myself. I was doing the whole car myself because I'm kind of like that. I'm not a great team. I have little tolerance for mediocrity. So I can be a little critical there. Yeah. And so, I was working on that. And then Ford said, "Oh, we're going to send that project to Japan. Do you want to work on something else?" I said, "No, I'm going to just leave. I'm not going to do that."
Your experience overall was like, you're excited by the engineering aspect, but there was a lot of bureaucracy in that environment that.
Yeah, and we were pretty good. We're in advanced engineering. I had unlimited budget. I could call anybody in the world and they'd fly in and see me. I mean, it was really great. I had unlimited resources to do what I wanted to do. But at the same time, you couldn't do anything. Because I asked one of the engineers, I said, "Why don't you guys innovate?" He goes, "Well, if you make a mistake, that's the end of your career." And so when I was first there, I was working on some valves in the electronic shock. And I went up to my manager. I said, "I'm going to build this prototype and it won't work." Because at Stanford, we were taught that you just build prototypes because they don't work. That's how you learn, you know. And he goes, "Why would you build it if you knew it didn't work?" And I go, "It's just life. You just can't, unless you build it, you won't know why it doesn't work. You know, you do your best job, but it always will fail." You know,
and so when you're trying something new, you need that latitude to be able to fail until, because you're gonna learn things, and then eventually you'll find something that works that surprises you.
Yeah, and you refine it, or you learn things you don't see. And one of the things I did there is, a typical thing as an engineer is you have a lab technician run your tests and takes the notes, you know. And I go, no, because in those tests, I'm seeing, hearing something, the kinesthetic whole experience that's maybe happening in that test that isn't written on paper. I might notice a subtle vibration that's telling me, "Oh, that valve's doing this," or something, you know, that it's not going to see in my report. Yeah. So there's that. Again, as we go back to racing motocross, so that whole gestalt experience of the bike.
And if you're delegating things, if everything's broken down into different people and everything's broken down into, you know, here are the numbers that we're looking for. Well, what if there's something going on that we're not looking for? Mm-hmm. That feels like that's the gap there of the prototyping process needs to be dynamic. It needs to be like, try something, see what happens, and using all of your senses.
Yes, and having a kinesthetic experience of that. And I can, this is a little bit longer story, but when I developed this shock there, they said, you need to send it over to the scientific research group for them to do some simulations to show your idea works. So I went over there, as like 3 PhDs over there, and I explained to them, and we worked on the formulas. And back then they had to wait and run it on a Cray computer and get time on that. So it took about a month. And then they either called me or sent me the results. And I went over there and I said, "You're wrong." And I left. And my boss called me and said, "You insulted them." And I said, "They're wrong. I'm sorry. The shock doesn't work like that." And he goes, "You insulted them. You're just, you're not a PhD here." And I said, "They're still wrong." And about a month or two later, I got a call from them and they said, "Hey, we found some mistakes in the math, in the equations. We reran the simulation and it's exactly as you said it was. How did you know that?" And that's the difference of where you talk about my racing is seat of the pants, feeling it, understanding it, then learning all the math at Stanford and stuff. So I put those together. And so it's not just you get lost in the equations but you don't really know what you're even doing.
So how did you know that in that case?
Because of shock absorbers are vital to motocross because you live and die by. And so the feeling of how something would work and then understanding that it would do this just because you're living in the gestalt of it all.
Do you have an image in your head, like when you're working with different mechanical components? Are you able to simulate that in your mind, like how it's going to respond to pressures?
Just to some extent. Yeah. And some of it's unknown, some of it's known, like you mentioned the G2 bike. We use all these things to design it. an experience of 20 years into that bike. And then you ride it and you go, wow, this is even better than we thought. So some of that is the subconscious coming in that you don't even know about and you haven't thought about. Some of it's just the sum of the parts, and it's really good. But that's what that racing's all about, is it just works really well. And so when one of my customers gets on the bike, they just go, this is great. Works wonderful. I'm having a great time. That's all I want them to do.
So when you came from that corporate experience, did you go right to founding Optibike and working on that?
No. I moved back to Santa Cruz and worked for a chemical dispensing company, a multinational, and designed pumps and things, and did that for 3 or 4 years. And then my wife and I decided to bike around the world. And so we got all set up to take off and bicycle around the world. And we made it about 5 months, and then she had some family issues. So we came back. You ask, about bikes in my life. And then when I was at Stanford, I lived at my dad's for a while, and I had to climb. I rode back and forth 16 miles to school, and always riding up these hills and stuff. That maybe that somewhere in the back of my mind was, maybe wouldn't it be easier if it was something can assist me up these hills,
Right.
So, but anyway, yeah, I did that for a while, and then we went on that trip, and then I came back and I got a job in a semiconductor firm where I was designing semiconductor equipment. So
you mentioned you met your wife back before you founded Optibike as well.
Yes.
So she's really seen the whole journey with you as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
the good,
amazing.
The bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And my kids too. They were almost born into it.
They were born right about the time that you were starting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they grew up and they'd never known anything but our family builds bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today when I see your bikes, it's obvious that there's a very high level of engineering and quality control with these bikes. And typically this is achieved by these teams delegating and having a dedicated quality control process. So how do you achieve the same degree of precision and quality control with a small team?
It's a good question. We're trying to figure that one out. I think it's because we all know what we're doing. Like when you take somebody on an assembly line, they're an assembler or a technician, but they don't understand what they're doing. So when we hand build, assemble each bike, every part, we understand what it's supposed to do. So we're not blindly putting something together and we go, oh, that bolt feels a little tight or it's not going to work. And we might just redesign that right there on the spot, so these are hand assembled. And so we get away with that but we're not using assembly people and that's why we've stayed in this kind of works thing of building each bike to get this ultimate performance. If we went to assemblies, then people can make mistakes. They don't know why they're doing anything.
The whole process becomes different. Like you have to delegate it.
You have to do it differently.
Yeah.
So you can't.
And you have to have more of the absolute quality controls with an assembly line process. Whereas what I'm hearing here, since each person who's working on the bike actually knows what the end result is supposed to be and what it's supposed to feel like, they can actually test it each step of the way to see, is this performing within the level that I'm expecting?
Yes. Yeah. And then it's we'll have a bike on the dyno and we might hear it walk in the room and go, oh, something sounds off. It doesn't have the right pitch. What's going on? It doesn't show up in the digital format, print out on the computer, but you might hear it, something like that. And that might send us down a journey to try and figure out what's going on. But yeah, we couldn't do this as mass produced because we build one at a time. And that's just, I love that. I don't want a mass production because then I wouldn't have the relationship with the customers. And I like that. And so we are going to continue to do that. And so we just get a different experience in life. It's like McDonald's versus a fine restaurant. I mean, it's not mass produced.
And so your two sons, Austin and Nick, work with you here as well. And I think, wow, what a lucky guy. Not only do his kids admire, what he does, but they're actually, here participating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you get to enjoy that experience. So how did you get to be so lucky that all worked out?
I have no idea. It wasn't planned. When I was 17, I was gone racing, and family life meant nothing to me, and we didn't plan it or anything. I don't know why. We get along, and they're really smart, and they contribute, and, we all work together to design products. It's really fun. So they just, I guess, enjoy it.
What did that look like for Nick and Austin, like coming into, I guess as they were young, they were experiencing different aspects of having the bikes and having the manufacturing shop. And
yeah, well, Austin was sort of drafted into making, building motors once. I think he was only 13 or 14, and our motor builder got in a car accident. And so I sort of had to take it over. And then I got Austin in there, and, he started building motors, and we're starting to tune them and all and troubleshoot them. And as we build them, and that was sort of the way he, I think, mainly first started getting into it. Nicholas is older, so he was into it a little sooner. He's 4 years older. And
what does Nicholas work on more?
He's into electronics. He's always been to electronics and electricity. He just like intuitively, you talk about the intuitiveness of understanding it. He just like, I don't even understand. It's neat to have your kids know more than you and go to them and say, hey, what's going on here? And have them just explain why it's doing that. And that's really neat to have a collaborative effort with them. It's not a top down.
Yeah. How do you structure conversations and decision-making within the team?
We'll sort of get together like we're designing something, and, they each have sometimes it's all of us inputting, and sometimes it's one of them, their specialty, and I don't want to waste people's time. And so, like Austin's really good at suspension and linkage designs, and he just sees that, like just looks at it and goes, it'll work like this. Uh-huh. So I'll bring him in and say, hey, what do you think of this? We're just doing that today. What do you think about this? And what should we do here? And he goes, yeah, just move that over there and do that. And that should be good.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the way the G2 came about, is he's looking at the linkages and doing that. And we use some software too to simulate it, but software simulates it, but you have to, again, feel it. It's that intuitive thing that makes the difference.
Yeah. One of the things that strikes me about engineering, I think it requires a high degree of truth telling and a high degree of trust amongst the team.
Mm.
If we're not telling the truth about, the quality control or the performance of different parts, that usually comes about because people fear repercussions. Again, going to like a bureaucratic environment where there's all of these repercussions that people might fear, that's then preventing them from telling the whole story.
Wow.
And then things start to break down. If you're not getting the true story on a component, then the sum breaks down because of a component failure.
Yeah. We don't have that because we don't have, multiple teams across continents trying to communicate information through them. And we're all here and we're all working together. When there's a problem, we all go and look at it and figure out a solution. You just get a lot of away from redundancy. The thing about a small business, you once mentioned, what did you learn at Ford? Well, Ford, I had unlimited resources, but it was hard to get anything done. And here I have very minimal resources, but I'm free to do whatever I want. And I'm a creative person, and I like to pursue stuff. And big companies, like in a big company, like a bicycle company, they freeze the design about almost 2 years before you'll see that bike, because they have to freeze the development. So then the production team can go through it. They can transfer it to the factory, and they make those bikes 6 to 8 months before you even see them, because they make so many of them. So you got a 2-year-old bike, and that's got to be perfect. And it kind of stunts that development or perfection, right? Because you have to kind of make it mediocre. Yeah. So it's easy to make a lot of, because making a lot of something, you might have to detune the performance. You might have to compromise because you got to hit price points and all these things. So it's a completely different experience. Whereas our bikes, we say every bike is better than the last bike, because we always are improving it.
So in addition to your engineering background, as you're growing a business, you would have needed to pick up these other skills around marketing and sales and watching cash flows, just all the other aspects of running a business. How did you pick up the skills that you needed for that?
Going to seminars and classes, and anything I needed, I would just go learn it. And I've done a lot of marketing classes and public speaking classes, negotiating classes, business management classes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I brought in consultants, to help, just whatever it takes. That's the kind of person I am. Whatever you got to do, you just go fully, So like, there's the creative process, right? You're off in la la land and creative, and some people never get out of that. There's an ethereal. And I also have just a bulldog personality of, take those designs, because it's hard. It's hard to take a design, iterate it through, build it, fail it, build some more and everything. Because a lot of these designs like that G2, I probably have, 50, 60 weeks of design into that frame and theoretical design and stuff like that. So, it's that. So that's what my approach is. You got to learn that stuff. So it is hard. Small business is hard.
What does a failure look like there? Do you catch that in terms of the design process and like running simulations, or do you sometimes fabricate a part and then you realize like, oh, this isn't going to work?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Simulations are only so good.
Yeah.
And maybe you could do really advanced ones, but again, the resources to do that, if you're at Boeing, but it's 100 million, so a bigger firm might be able to do those, but we'll build things and then we have to test them and they just fail. They're not what we thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
We make stupid mistakes.
And you try and catch it as early as you can.
Yeah. Well, that's all part of, you're building, again, we're building prototypes and testing them and going, that didn't work. Got to fix this, got to fix that. And so we're iterating all the time. And so you get to a point where the product is good enough to sell and you still can make it better. We're always making it better,
Yeah. What drives that process for you? Like, give an example of something that inspired you to create a new bike, because you're like, we want something that just doesn't exist in any of our other product lines.
A lot of that's that 20 years, or I've been designing e-bikes for 30 years. So this last G2 is accumulation of 30 years or 28 years, whenever we started on it. And it's everything we learned and kind of like what would make the best e-bike. And I say I'm probably the most experienced e-bike designer in the world. And I'm not just an e-bike designer because I designed the electronics, I worked software, like the whole thing. I understand the whole gambit of the bike. And that's another thing that a lot of engineers, you might get a mechanical engineer design a suspension, but he doesn't understand the motors. So they don't gel together because he doesn't know how to talk to them.
Yeah.
My thing at Stanford was that we did design engineering degree. So we learned how do you design and manage a team of all those people. So we had to learn enough, like, your software, and I had to learn enough to talk to software people about what I wanted. And that's one of the differences I think about our bikes is we're, we all understand every aspect of it. So when we're riding the bike, all that information is coming into my brain, the shocks, but the shock, maybe it's because of the power, maybe it's because of, the brakes. Or
as you start to see some sort of gap, there's always a brainstorming process or about what component, what material could exist that would be a solution for this.
Every time if I go on a 2-hour ride, I'll come back with, 5 new designs or a new thought about why didn't I do this in the bike before? And that's, so yes, like where does the G2 come from? Probably, all those rides where you're riding and you go, well, this could be better and that could be better. And why didn't we do this? And why didn't we do that? Because we're riding when we're doing that and the brain's working subconsciously.
Yeah. And you're living in this area here that's just beautiful. I live here. I appreciate like this. We're up on the western slope of Colorado. We're up in the Rocky Mountains, and just close to your shop here, there's these beautiful riding experiences out into the wilderness. Mm-hmm. So How'd you end up finding this location and selecting this as a place to be?
I don't know. My brother told me about this place 25 years ago or something, 30 years ago. You mentioned the Rocky Mountains and the evolution of the bike. And I think our bikes are very inspired and developed by the Rocky Mountains. They're probably way more capable than most people ever put them through, because we're going on 5,000 foot climbs, through crap and everything, and downhills that are so steep, they smoke the brakes. You won't find that in most of the country. And, we're just like Rocky Mountain tough. We're built for this. That's what we live on. It's like one day I wanted to go do a test on flat ground, do some mileage tests. And I go, there is no flat ground. I don't know where there's any flat ground.
I got to drive for a while. I got to drive to Nevada.
Yeah. There is no flat ground here. You're either going up or you're going down, right? Maybe a little section in there, but not like some other places where you're just riding flat. You could do those range tests. So we have a different kind of bike because of that. We're not for everybody. We're really performance based and holistic package, and it's a unique bike. A lot of our riders, they're tend to be older people, and they've had very active lives. They've been maybe a lot of motocross racers, or they've been skydivers, or they've taken risks in their life, skiers, and their bodies can't take it anymore. And the Optibike is like an extension of that. Like some keep taking risks and challenges, which they can do without trashing their body anymore. So it's like a life extension for them. And, they're using it as a tool to keep living their life. It's not the end of their life, it's just, you're trying to, they still have that vitality. They want to do things, they want to go on adventures. And so maybe when they're young, the adventure was riding around the world on a unicycle, I don't know. And now it might be just doing a 50-mile ride on their Optibike or something.
Yeah. So you get stories coming in of how it's enabled people to go back out there and adventure.
Yeah. And that's what I think of a trait of our customers is they want to keep living life. They're not ready to stop. And we all grow old. I went to the Northern California Motocross reunion a few weeks ago, and we went on a bike ride, about 60 of us. We didn't race. And most people are on e-bikes. And, I just thought about these guys used to race, and these are some best people in the world. And not too many of them are riding motorcycles anymore, certainly not racing. And this bike, though, they with mountain bikes, e-bikes, they're out in the trails. They go, this is, I can do it. My body isn't getting beat. It's not so dangerous. And without it on a regular bike, they may not have the fitness, or their knees are blown, so they couldn't go out and enjoy the trails. And there was even a couple guys behind me listening. They're both on chemotherapy, and they're going, these e-bikes, they make my life. I can't ride my dirt bike anymore. And just thought that's really cool when you're doing that for people.
Mm-hmm. Because the dirt bike beats them up too much.
It's just too strenuous, too dangerous. They're on chemo. He goes, this bike ride will probably kill me, but 2 hours on the e-bike. But that's really neat. People are, living life. That's what it's all about, is living it, feeling alive.
Do you have any advice for people who might be, maybe they're in the prototyping stage of a business and they haven't really got that market engagement yet, but they're just in the trenches doing it? What would you say to a person in that position?
Quit. No. Save yourself.
Save yourself.
Yeah. Launching a business is hard, and making it successful. And I think a lot of people are driven by, what they want to do, and they don't look enough at what the market really is to really understand the market. And if there is a market, not just your belief of the market.
And how did you balance that? How did that enter into your process?
Well, one of the problems, was for us is I built my first prototype in 95. And then I had a really nice bike in 98, and we went to Schwinn and all the people, and they're like, what's an e-bike? Well, we don't want an e-bike, and all that. And so we patented most of the technology in 2000 that other bikes are using today, mid-drives, batteries and frames. It did all that 25 years ago, but we were too ahead of the curve. We were a small firm, and we can't make the market. Mm-hmm. The big firms make the market. They can make all that happen. because they can waste years of money, like happened in the e-bike field. And now e-bikes are everywhere. But that wasn't the case 20 years ago. I had to, 20 years ago, we had to educate people what an e-bike was when they came to our website. Now you don't have to educate anyone, I don't think. They'll know what an e-bike is. Mm-hmm. So that's a thing of being aware. You can be too soon into a market, right? And you don't know if it's a market. So it's always changing because as the market grows, but there's more competition and they have more money.
Did you struggle early on in the company just to
I spent
make things work?
I made one in 95 and we sold our first one in 2007. So that's a few years.
Yeah.
And that was
12 years.
And that was part, you can build a prototype and that's really easy. You want to build something to sell. That's a whole different matter. And it's quite expensive.
And you're saying it was like 12 years between the time when you were prototyping something to when you actually sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't build one worthy of selling, to get through all the prototyping. Again, we were building everything from scratch then because there was no technology. We had to build throttles, build controllers, everything. No one knew. There's no one to talk to. So it was all new. And so it was very hard. And I had young kids and taking care of family and, trying to make money too. And, and this was a side thing. So.
Yeah. So when it first started out, you were still working your day job and you had Optibike as a thing you were experimenting with.
Yes.
Yeah. At what point did you make the switch over and commit yourself full time to Optibike? Like, what were your sales looking like at that time?
Well, we jumped to $1 million in sales in a year.
Okay.
Just suddenly, I don't know why.
So something caught on. You hit a threshold where all of a sudden what you were doing was working and was breaking through to the market.
We actually started selling them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one we sold in 2007. And by 2008, I think I had $1 million. When the financial crisis hit, I had $1 million in orders for Optibikes. And it really didn't affect us because we were about the only bike and the best in the world. I think we've always been the best bike in the world. And we sold bikes in 34 countries. So yeah, that grew pretty fast. And that's when I go, I got to kind of get into this more.
So you had the phone ringing off the hook with orders.
Yeah. And then it started to grow to where you start to lose that.
So did you have a backlog at that point? Yeah. Like you had a huge backlog of work to do?
Yeah, it was difficult to build them. We couldn't build them, get everything debugged. And so it was pretty crazy at times.
Tell us where people can find out more about your bikes.
Well, we sell direct. We don't have any dealers. So they can go to our website, they can call us and they order one. So if somebody wants to order one, they can place a deposit on the website. Or they can call us and then we'll go through their needs and we'll build the bike and then we send them an order and we start building the bike, what they want. And it's not for everyone. I tell a lot of people a bike isn't for them. It's different. The bikes are expensive. They're super quality. That we had someone the other day, I had a customer this year from Switzerland. He bought one of our 2008 bikes. And he goes, I need a new battery. And he goes, I'm just going to send it back to you to get it refurbished. 2008. Almost 20 years. Yeah. We redid it all, sent it back to him, and he was perfectly happy. That's cool. And that thing of building something of high quality that just keeps working. They don't, you rebuild them, but they don't fall into a pile of crap. I've had a lot of customers have switched to us because they bought e-bikes and they go, they're not what they're advertised. They don't go as far as they should. They don't climb the hills. And they break after a couple months. They're just a complete lie. And we try and tell the truth and we turn customers down if we're not the right bike for them.
Mm-hmm. They're looking for a sacrificial, throw it in a ditch bike. It's not.
No, sometimes it's not right for them.
I found it's incredibly, there's no instruction manual. There are people try and create guides to starting a company, but I mean, the truth is, you will never know until you try it. No one can tell you.
And when you do it again, it won't be the same.
Yeah.
Serial inventors, they have this great maybe their fifth one is great and they are wildly successful. They start the next, they all fail because it's not just you. It's not just me. It's the economy. It's the movement of society. Is it ready for that product? And you miss it a couple of years and you're out of money, or, so there's so many things. It depends when you start your company. It's not necessarily a bad idea, right? It's just, and you can start it in a recession and it doesn't ever do anything because nobody has any money and it can't take off, but it's not a bad idea. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like they say about war, right? You train and train and train, but the minute the shooting starts,
your plan is out.
Your plan is out, but you're still using your training,
Yes.
But you don't know what that battle's going to be like. That's what makes it fun, right? Because it's always something new. And what I like is the trade-off, because, it's always a trade-off. I always say that Eagle song, every form of refuge has its price. So in a small business, I get to decide, I'm going to make this bike and I can go and make it. I don't have to ask anyone, but I also have to live with making it, and finance it and do all that stuff and put my time into it, but I can do that. And it's kind of cool to just say, I'm going to go build this and I'm going to make this, and have someone say, hey, that was really neat. I'm going to buy it. It's also scary when you invest a lot of money and then people go, oh, I don't like that.
What's your proudest accomplishment looking back over these 20 years?
With Optibike?
Yeah.
I think one is working with my kids and seeing them grow up in it and be part of it. And that's really neat. I think it's missing in society today. That family thing. And so it's not, sometimes it's all about metrics and you can't measure a lot of metrics about family. And we just, I don't know, it's not a normal life, but it's fun. And it's been able to create things. And I've probably done, the other day I saw a SRAM. I read an article about it. They have a patent. The patent. I go, shit, that's the bike we sold for in 2014. Looks the drawing of it, and they're saying they want to patent it. And I already built that 10 years ago. And so I don't get the recognition, I guess. So you ask the big company, that might get to be sent out there into the world, but a small company, you can't do everything, and so it's fun because it's always changing. You got to have that personality that can take it.
Yeah, just keep going. Keep finding another way if something doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's not easy. It's just a way of life. And you asked me about motocross, maybe on the engineering side, but it also taught me is about perseverance, because you can feel like crap and you're tired and you crash and you got to get up and keep going. You got to get up and keep going. And maybe that's what drives me today. I don't know. Maybe I was born this way.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it's just that you had a sort of a set of circumstances where the creative spirit didn't get stamped out, mm-hmm. where you managed to continue to create environments for yourself where that could thrive.
Yeah. And my mother one day, I think it was before I was going to Stanford, and I was complaining about the door latch on my car. And she goes, why don't you just go do something about that? Stop complaining. And maybe that was the thing why I go, okay, I'll go start creating things.
Do you find that, is that a pattern in your life of, I guess maybe you and the people around you, taking the attitude of not expressing sympathy so much as saying just take responsibility for it? That's something that you all embody consistently?
I guess you have to as a small company, right? Because the buck stops. There's nobody, when the phone calls, we answer it. Mm-hmm. If the bike broke or something happened, it's us. There's no, corporation to buffet you and hiding back there. It's a personality, right? If you want to be racing, is you put everything out there and say, I can win. And if you don't win, you didn't win. And so small business is sort of like that. You put everything into it. If you don't sell any, well, you lost, but that's a personality. A lot of people don't want to stand up on stage and sing and find out they can't sing.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the driving, it just is a personality thing.
Being willing and having that courage
and tough skin and whatever. I don't know what drives you,
Yeah. So tell me about the main lines of bike that you have and like what they're specialized for.
Yeah. We have three broad lines of bike. One is an urban bike, and that's designed, for commuting, driving to work, driving around town, those sort of things. And then we have an EMTB class, which is a trail legal bike, class 1 bike. And then we have our E-Venture series. And those bikes are unique that we created the E-Venture class because we have this multi-mode interface, the MMI, that allows you to choose your bike if it's going to be class 1, 2, or 3, or a moto mode, which is 2,500 watts peak. So it's almost like a little motorcycle. But, there's 17,000 miles of Forest Service fire roads, where people are riding motorcycles, dirt bikes, and those are all legal on that thing. And that's, again, we developed that because I saw the limitations of why am I stuck in a 20 mile an hour bike riding to the trailhead, when I could be going much faster. And one of my things is I love to ride. I don't want to get in a car and drive somewhere and ride my bike and then come home in the car. I want to just ride there and ride that. And that's how one of the reasons I developed the Everest with that huge battery, because I wanted to, go somewhere and ride all day, not just a few miles. And I wanted to go fast at times or climb 5,000-10,000 feet of climbing. So those bikes are born out of our experience of all those years.
Yeah, I know one of the things that surprised me, we took the G2 and the Everest out for some test drives. And one day we had everything in sport mode, highest, what is the Moto mode? Yeah. And, of course, a lot of power going up the hills and, really enjoyable, having fun. And then, at the end of the day going like, okay, we're at about half battery life. We better head back. And then going out there again, but putting it in, like the middle, like on the G2, there's 5 levels, and I've dropped mine down to 3, and just a whole world of difference in terms of the battery conservation. And I remember, getting back here, and I had gone even further that day. We probably went twice as far, and coming back and having like 60% battery. That's really cool to be able to have those options and say like, I'm gonna go through the obstacle course and just want to go maximum power, or I want to go from more of a measured pace. Maybe you're looking at the map and figuring out how many miles you're going to cover. And
that's why we say you control your experience. If you're feeling crappy, that day and you're tired, but you can go out and let the bike do a lot, but you're getting out, you're just even moving your legs, you're flowing blood, you're breathing fresh air, your vestibular system's working. All that is contributing to changing your state and everything. You don't have to be hammering it every day. It isn't good to hammer it every day, but probably being outside is good.
Any final words that you'd want to leave people with?
I'm passionate about e-bikes. I think they're amazing because of what they do for a person's fitness and health. They use very little energy. They don't pollute. I think they're an amazing product. That's one reason I got into it, because I call it a win-win-win situation. And they can really change people's lives. And they're a tool you can use. And Optibikes are at the upper end of tools for people that really appreciate, performance and just everything working together. They're not for everyone. They're expensive. They're hand-built, extremely rare. But if it's something you appreciate, a lot of people, appreciate that. As someone said one day, I can go on a vacation or I can buy an Optibike. So it isn't that expensive, so that's my final words is, e-bikes are incredible. Should all ride one.
Yeah. And I'll second that. Having taken these bikes on a few runs, man, they're great. So thank you, Jim. Thanks for all the work that you're doing, and may it continue for many more years.
Yeah.
Happy 20th.